All right. So the two people that I decided to interview were Dirk Libers and Carrington Price Jr. So for the first one, um, Dirk Dirk is the director of the Center of Entrepreneurship, right? So my major is entrepreneurship, and honestly, I really just decided to interview him because I mean, as long like obviously he does have correlation to my major. He is the director of my major, but outside of academic advising, he could also help me grow professionally because he is a trained professional and he could provide me the skills, he could provide me the insight in what I would need to prepare myself for this field. So a big thing that Dirk actually talked about is, great having great communication skills. And in terms of leadership, connecting it to the class, that is obviously super, super, super important. Um, Communication skills, having a good personality, and being able to work with a team and mold domains. That's what he said word for word. Um, I do like that idea of entrepreneurship, specifically with leadership as well, being able to mold into what your team, what the task desires you to mold into so that you can grow as a person and as well make sure everyone else around you grows. Now, um, for Carrington Price, he was I gave him to be fair, I did give him I gave him the same questions. He wanted to provide a little bit of a different insight. So just entering in an entry level professional, taking classes and focusing on like transferable skills was the major advice he'd given me. Um, so that's how I could set myself up for success and know, the entry level professional. They have two different definitions of leadership. So Dirk, he more so focuses on bringing everyone on the same page, going in a certain direction and having very ambitious goals and get advocating that to the whole organization. Whereas Carrington is more so taking risks, communicating potential benefits, and taking that extra precaution for people that you're leading in times who don't see like immediate profit or benefits. So why is this important? Because leadership is not just a one person effort. It is a team, it is a group. It is not Leadership is not just skills that you could focus on yourself. It's essentially tying in my own definition. You would focus more so on being able to work well with others and just working well as a team and being able to have those desires met, have those goals, those ambitions ultimately resulting in, good mentorship, good leadership, having that accomplished. And another question I would like to focusing on is mentorship in this role. Now, Carrington is pretty much a mentorship for the BBC community, which is a program that I'm a part of, as well as Zap. And Dirk is a director as well. So these are great people to ask mentorship questions on. Um, so Carrington decided to focus in on it being very crucial because you're getting diverse perspectives and from someone outside of yourself. And that could be beneficial because, you might not always understand what you do, what you act, how you behave, and having that outside perspective of someone, you know, telling you, "Hey, you're doing this, you're doing that," whether it's good or bad, is just good insight to have because you get to know a little bit more about yourself. Obviously, the mentorship has to be someone that you trust so that they don't lead you down the path. And Carrington also noted that like having a bad mentor is worse than having no mentor at all because not only does that bad mentor, have a bad reputation, but that reputation would be brought onto you. And then Dirk, he said it was very important because it gives you direction in, the fruitful endeavor that you might point out dead ends and just being able to learn a lot. So similar definitions, but a little different. And how that ties to leadership, it's exactly the same thing. It all comes down to values, it comes down to ideas, it comes down to belief systems of what those leaders have and why they need to work on it. Because outside leadership, like I said, I keep hammering this point. Leadership is not just like having a conversation with yourself or just talking to yourself. It's you have to be mindful of others. You have to think of other perspectives. You have to have like a bird's eye point of view. You can't, sorry, excuse me. You can't have just you can't, you have to be equipped. You have to be able to see from a different perspective. You have to be open-minded. And so this leads me to my next question. What are some like examples or strategies that promotes inclusivity? What the difference between Dirk and Carrington is, yes, they both gave like practical examples of, um, people coming from all different perspectives, but Dirk focused more on like the diversity within the work environment, whereas Carrington focused on the difference in people and how they act. So Dirk gave the example of, people working in this center from all different walks of life, all different cultures, whereas Carrington was focusing more so people on being more reserved, and contrasting that to people who are more outspoken, and having that promoting that inclusivity is important because you get to incorporate everyone's voice. So how that ties to leadership, it's obviously super, super important that the whole body is heard. Otherwise, I mean, it's not really leadership, it's more of dictatorship. It's leadership is you have to have people on the same page as you. You can't just dictate what you want the perspective. You need to have the open-minded of everyone's voice around you. And so what I thought was really cool is when how he brought up, the different character people outside of different cultures, um, and different beliefs, how people actually act. And that's super cool for me. And so the some other questions, for more context, I asked like if they had a turning point within their career. Dirk, he used to work for private sector, and then he was like really burnt out and decided to, his dad was a professor. He saw the lifestyle, thought it was really appealing, and he decided to, become an academic advisor, director actually. And, he is motivated by seeing the success of students, in their entrepreneurial careers. Whereas Carrington, um, his it wasn't it wasn't a turning point. It was more so just a big event that happened within his career, and that is taking up more responsibilities, um, within, more kids. He is an academic advisor, and so he was able to he introduced a new pod, 32 kids, having to manage a total of not 140 anymore, but 170. And so he had to plan for that. He had to take up more responsibility, and he has to do more advising, more development, as well as promote more community efforts with the leadership that he was given. And what keeps him motivated is having that strong sense of purpose to help others grow, develop, and become better versions of themselves. So, how this whole thing ties to leadership, it's super important because, I mean, ultimately, this is just offering two different perspectives, like this whole interview, two different perspectives of, their own examples of leadership, and being able to soak that in, being able to understand that, being able to, you know, talk about that and think out my thoughts out loud is important because not only am I learning these new perspectives, but I could also implement these perspectives into my own leadership practices, being mindful of people, being mindful of how they act, where they come from, their cultures, and being able to be deeply rooted in my own belief system and having that strong sense of purpose and understanding of myself so that I can portray that very clearly. Transparency is very important with leadership so that the group could decide whether or not, hey, this guy, I resonate with this guy. I would want to work with him. Or someone that would disagree would just be like, okay, yeah, so that's not going to be my taste. We could go our separate ways. It's super, super important to keep that in mind because transparency is key. Thank you.